It's all we can do.
The thing was, so I called my mom. I said, you need to come get him. I can't right now. I cannot deal with him. I cannot look at him. You need to take him. And looking back, I'm like, he was smoking. That wasn't a big deal. But it wasn't the smoking. It was the lying. It was the sneaking. It was the betrayed trust. Yeah. When you're a single parent, I know it's hard when you're a parent. But when it's just you and your kid against the world. Yeah. Those are hard.
And you're already stressed out about other things.
Exactly. And, of course, you don't want him to smoke. And one of his friends put it into perspective. Well, of course he didn't tell you. What kid wants to tell their mom that they're slowly killing themselves with smoking? I was like, wow, that was a light bulb moment. But he was with my mom, and I ordered some food because apparently I'm an angry eater. Just and the delivery guy was staring at me really weird and then looking at the floor, and I realized I had blood dripping from my arm down onto the floor, and I guess I had just scraped myself or whatever. I still have the scar, and I had a huge bruise for like you would think I was in a major accident, just how much this bruise. So I must have nicked a vein or something. And that scar is a reminder to me that no matter what my son does, to never lose control like that again. Yeah. We can joke about it and laugh about it, but my son was honest to goodness afraid of me, and I never wanted my son to be afraid of me. I love my mom. I have the most respect for my mom, but let's face it, that generation was you want something to cry for? I'll give you something to cry for. They used fear, and I didn't want to use fear. So we joke around about our kids, but I also wanted to share that story because parenting is tough, and we're going to make mistakes.
We are. I remember the first time Andy came home, and I'll admit it, my son's a pothead. He is, and he knows that too. So
that's why they got along so well.
I know. And, it would drive me crazy. But for the longest time, while I was a single mom, before I met Steve, I was buying Andy allergy pills. Because I thought he had allergies, because his eyes were always red. Then I meet Steve, and Steve's there one night, and Steve says, Jackie, he's not got allergies. He's stoned. I'm like, he is not stoned. And I get all indignant. Yeah, Mom, I am, he says. Oh my God. But you know what? The thing is, when he was smoking pot, which he still does today, but his marks went from like a 60 to honor roll. Wow. He graduated on the honor roll, and now he's an architectural technologist. So you know what? Que sera, sera. They all turned out okay. I'm really proud of all three of the kids. But there is times when I've lost it on them.
Disclaimer, he's not stoned while designing your new house, just so you know.
No, he is not.
Well, and the thing is, too, in addition to those, you had you had a serious health scare with your son as well.
Yes. My son's had 2 brain tumors. Wow. One at 18 months. And, that's another hard thing. I want to tell all the moms out there, if you suspect something's not right with your kid, you argue with the hospital. Because I had taken him to the hospital repeatedly when he was a baby. And I was told, because my daughter had just been born, there was only 15 months between them, that I was suffering from postpartum depression. And it was about the 4th time I had taken him. It was Christmas Day. My dad took me to the hospital with him. And the doctor actually came in and said, there's nothing wrong with your son. If you bring him in here again, we're going to call Family and Children's Services.
Really?
Really. And I started to cry. I was like, oh my God, I'm just depressed. I'm dreaming that my son is sick. There's nothing wrong with him. And I felt like the worst mother in the world. 2 weeks later, I was visiting my mom and dad. And I went to get him out of his crib at their house, and he couldn't stand up. His forehead was bulging out. His eyes had crossed. My mom said, we're not taking him to the local hospital. We're going straight to the children's hospital. So we drove to the children's hospital, and this is when the meningitis scare was on. We sat in the hospital for 10 hours. And the doctor came in finally and looked at Andy, and he said, your son has a brain tumor. Why was this not found before now? Wow. Just by looking into his eyes. They did a CAT scan, and they said, we have to operate tonight or he's not going to be here.
Wow.
And that was the scariest moment of my life. But it also, and I started to doubt myself and my abilities as a mom, and started to think, what am I doing? But no, I trust my instincts now. And when there's something wrong with one of my kids or with myself or Steve or anyone, get to the hospital, argue with the doctors if you don't like the diagnosis that you're getting. Get a second opinion, but don't let them tell you that there's nothing wrong.
And that's the hardest thing as parents, to realize that we are the advocates for our children. We were lucky with the training that we had,
Yes.
social service work and working in the schools and working in the different programs. We knew that we had a voice and could advocate for
Yes.
our children. And I remember my son was really struggling quite a bit. Like my son was very calm, very easy child, very easy baby to look after, an easy toddler to look after until he started school. That's when we started seeing behavioral changes
Yeah.
and issues. Like I got a phone call one day. And part of this was my fault. I thought I was putting my son in a French immersion program. I put him in a French fucking school.
Oh, my God.
Where they don't speak any English at all, and the poor kid is like, I don't understand.
Oh,
This is
Chris.
like his second year of school, and I thought I was doing something wonderful. Oh no, nah. I did not. And I get a phone call, and they're like, just wanted to let you know that your son threw a chair at the teacher today. I'm like, oh. Do you need me to come get him? Oh, no, we just wanted to let you know the teacher handled the situation, da-da-da. I was like, wow. And then we moved back home, and things started to escalate. And I thought I was being proactive in telling the schools, this is what's going on with Stuart.
Yeah.
And I think that can be helpful, but I also think it put a target on Stuart's back. They stopped paying attention to what the underlying factors could be. They were just, he's just got behavior issues, right? And I chalked it up to the fact that he'd been in 4 different schools within 2 years. We had moved. His dad got remarried. He had stepbrothers now. I had moved in with my mom, and then I was living on my own again. Like, there's just, our life was in a lot of upheaval. But when we finally, after a few years, we had stability and I was working and we were in the same place kind of thing, the behavior continued. And I was working in a program where I was working with kids with behavioral challenges, and I started to make some connections. And I'm thinking, people would say, well, we think Stuart has ADHD. I said, no, he's not skinny enough. And people would laugh. But if you actually look at children with ADHD, they're very, very thin because their metabolisms are going so fast to keep up with the hyperactivity.
Exactly. Yep.
ADD is more of a focus. It's not a hyperactive. It's just a lack of focus. And I remember going to his principal and saying, I think Stuart might actually be ADD. And they said, no, he's just behavioral. And I remember looking at her saying, what do you think ADD is? They tried to tell me that he was oppositional defiance disorder. I said, no, because I can get my kid to do things.
Yeah.
And I had to start fighting for my son and for a right to his education because they kept sending him home. They wouldn't create an IEP. They wouldn't create, I had to fight for a psychoed analysis. I had to fight for all of that. And with the pediatrician's help and then his grade 6 teacher, because my son was diagnosed between grade 5 and grade 6. Which was tough, too, because now he had a bunch of learned behaviors that were really hard to undo, right?
Yeah.
But I remember my son coming home, 10 years old, trying to do his homework, and he threw it across the room. And he said to me, he goes, I'm stupid. I'm not going to be ready for grade 6. I should have never came to grade 5. That's not something a 10-year-old tells themselves.
No. He's heard that somewhere.
He heard that,
Yeah.
So we got the ADD focus, ADD diagnosis. And even when he was older, I was still learning. And I came across a teacher at a high school that I was working at who gave me a book to read. And I didn't read the entire book because I think I might be a little ADD myself. But
no.
yeah. What? Squirrel. What was that? Ooh, I'm thirsty. What? Huh? But the best description of ADD was in that book. And it was that because everybody wanted to know why you were giving ADHD and ADD children a stimulant when you're trying to calm them down.
Yes.
In this book, it said that in our brains is a highway with traffic going. They've got places to go and things to do by certain times. And in a neurotypical brain, that traffic flows, stops as it should, keeps going.
Yeah.
Because there is a traffic cop there to direct everybody.
Not in my brain.
In the ADD brain, the cop is asleep.
Okay.
So the stimulant is to wake up that part of the brain that helps regulate.
Yeah.
My cop is on strike.
Mine too. I'm there.
The best description after that was that of a parent of an ADD child. It's like someone in the middle of rush hour whose car is broke down and there's nothing they can do about it, and everyone around them is screaming to fix it.
Yeah.
those were huge light bulb moments for me. And there are people out there that say ADD and ADHD aren't real diagnosis. And if you're listening and you're one of those people, I have two things to say. Try living with someone with either of those diagnoses. And once upon a time, autism wasn't real either.
Exactly. There's so many opinions out there, especially with social media now, and it's so hard, as a parent, as a single parent, you read this stuff and you think, wow, maybe I'm not doing this right. Just trust your gut. You're not going to kill your children. Just go do what you're doing. They're going to turn out okay. Believe in yourself. But, on that talk about schools and teachers, I remember one time, we used to getting the calls at home that are really bad. And I remember one time I got this call. It was 7 p.m, and this teacher called and said, "Hi, is this Mrs. Agnew?" And I said, "Yes. I'm calling you about Bree." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And, I was getting ready for the really bad spiel. And he said to me, "I just want you to know that it's a pleasure teaching your daughter, and she's just a wonderful student." And that just made my night. It felt so good because we're so used to getting the bad calls that when we get the good calls, that's the first time that ever happened. And he said, "I'm a teacher who will call you when something good is happening."
Well, I remember a secretary at my son's school, after my son was diagnosed and was put on medication, and I'm not a pill pusher, but medication is what my son needed.
Yep.
And she said, "Stuart is holding his head up.
Wow.
He's walking with confidence." I got a phone call once from a teacher. It's it's along your lines, but not quite. Stuart was in high school. High school was the turnaround point for my son. He still struggled. He still had issues. He ended up dropping out of high school, but because school wasn't his thing. But I got a phone call from his French teacher. She's like, "I just want to let you know that Stuart is refusing to do his work." I said, "Oh, is he being rude, disrespectful?" She said, "Oh, no. He's being quite he's being quite polite in his non-compliance." I was like, "Oh, that's good news.
Yes, that's
great.
An improvement." We grab any bone we can.
And the thing is, Stuart wasn't a bad kid. The kids liked him. The parents liked him.
Yeah.
It was just that Stuart didn't handle the structure of the classroom well.
Yeah.
And
there are kids who can't handle that structure.
Nope.
There really are. And, I think that the education system, not that that's what our topic is about, but it really needs to be looked at.
Well, I remember working as an EA in the school system, and grade 3 students were learning math that I learned in grade 6 and 7.
Yes.
And they weren't getting that foundation that they needed. It was like building a house on sand.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that foundation, if you don't make sure that they know how to add and subtract before you go on to multiplication and division, you can't expect them to excel in fractions and algebra and that sort of thing, right? So I think they're not making sure that foundation is in place. And I mean, we could get into that.
Yeah.
We could.
Just on that topic, though, I remember Bree bringing homework home in grade 8. And her grade 8 teacher was a wonderful man. Anyhow, I wrote a note in her book because she asked me to help her. And I said, "I'm very sorry. English is my forte, not math. You'll have to help her with her homework because I have no fucking clue what this means or what it's about."
Was that Fitzy by chance?
Yes, it was.
I was actually an EA in Mr. Fitzmaurice's class.
Yeah.
And it was a grade 6 class. He'd moved from grade 8 to grade 6, and they were doing math. And I would go at recess or whenever I had free time, and I said, "Okay, you need to show me how to do this so I can help the kids." Because the math was that advanced that I, a grown-ass woman, was like...
I had no idea.
And they change how you do math.
Exactly. But he is one of the best teachers
He
out
is
there.
an amazing teacher. I don't know if he's ever going to be listening to this, but Fitzmaurice is an amazing, amazing teacher. Yeah, so... The one, I think, if I were to ever say anything to a parent who was struggling is, for me, what worked was always being honest with my son and admitting when I was wrong. So that day that I lost my shit, and I totally lost my temper, I sat him down and said, "Okay, this is what you did, and this was what was wrong, but I didn't handle it right. I did not handle this well at all, and you didn't deserve that, and I'm sorry." And I think as parents, we're afraid to do that.
We are.
We think that we have to be right and the kids have to bow to us, but I think showing them that we're fallible and that we make mistakes and that we're willing to own up to them and apologize, that validates a child.
Exactly.
And that teaches them that it's okay to make mistakes as long as you apologize and make up for it.
Yeah. Anytime my kids and I had an argument, I'd give us both that cooling off time and then go in and say, I'm really sorry that this happened.